It's Monday the 17th of April. A warm welcome to you. You're with the AM Report. I'm Michelle Craig.
I'm Andy Ngati. Great to see you. And we kick things off with legal matters because another postponement in the arms deal trial involving former President Jacob Zuma and French arms company Thales is expected this morning. This will likely be as a result of legal teams needing time to prepare witnesses for the start of the trial. Yeah, the other possibility is that former President Jacob Zuma will yet again try to have lead prosecutor Billy Downer removed now that he faces charges in the private prosecution, where he's now accused of leaking the former president's medical records to journalist Karyn Maughan. Let's get you an update with Ziyanda Ngcobo. She joins us from outside the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Ziyanda, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. So there's a lot going on, right? There's a new judge in this corruption trial, and again, questions swirling about, whether the trial will indeed get underway today.
Absolutely. So certainly the trial will not get underway today. You'll know that Judge Bitgun recused himself from the matter at the end of January, and that's when Judge Nkosinathi took over. So as you've already mentioned, you and Ziyanda, it's either there's going to be a postponement to start preparing the witnesses, and it's not issues around pre-trial matters, but rather getting the brief and submitting list, or we could see the former president filing new application to say, well, Billy Downer had not been charged at the time they made their initial request to have him removed from the matter. So we could see a fresh attempt to have Billy Downer removed from this matter. Let's bring in Pumelelo Zigalala actually to talk about that, because the previous attempt to have Billy Downer removed was rejected, and it was on the basis of the fact that there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove that he doesn't have a title to prosecute, which was the foundation of the application. Would that now stand because he's an accused? Would that change the dynamic?
Not really, depending on the interpretation of the court. Now, if you want the wider interpretation, you then say, let's look at the title to prosecute. Let's not limit it to things that are administrative. Let's look at the conduct of the prosecutor. Now, previous case law has stated that the prosecutor does not have to like you. So the only thing in which they have to do is to look out for the interests of the state, and they are going to do and state things which are biased towards the state. But in instances where there have been injustices that have taken place, you do have a reprieve. Highlight those during the trial, and at the end of the trial or during an appeal, you can then go and say, the appeal court, please look at the manner in which this matter was handled. There were certain contraventions with regards to my rights in terms of Section 35. I'm highlighting these instances in which the prosecutor was misbehaving, but it's certainly not something which would be entertained by the court, which is this particular court dealing with the matter at these initial stages. Now, what the new application would then say, it would say, but look at the conduct of the prosecutor and the steps in which the length in which you've gone through to try and prove that this is a person that has contravened the NPA Act. And the response to that would be, Advocate Billy Downer is still an innocent individual in as much as you are, Mr. Zuma. After the trial is done and concluded, only then you can come back and say that he's guilty of contravening the NPA Act. If you don't have that within your pocket, within your side, you cannot really say that you do not have title to prosecute.
So I remember quite well in the ruling that was handed down by Judge Bitgun at the time, the issue of whether or not there's a political conspiracy. He cited the Supreme Court of Appeal matter to say even if Billy Downer is politically motivated, if there's enough evidence to be tested before the court, then the trial must continue. But let's then also, the other aspect, remind the viewer of what Judge Bitgun had said about, dealing with this issue of the conduct of the prosecutor within the trial and not trying to have Billy Downer removed before.
He was basically saying, I want you to highlight those instances of the prosecutor misbehaving during the trial, so that when you go on an appeal court, you then say, these are the instances in which the prosecutor was not behaving well. It was in contravention of the NPA Act, for example. Most importantly, it was contravention of my rights as per Section 35. If you had a different prosecutor who did not conduct himself in this particular manner, I would have had a fair trial. But now, because you're engaged, or this particular prosecutor behaved in this manner, this is why you are here today, and that can only be done after the trial is done and dusted. But I think the argument from the president's side would be, why allow me to go through a laborious trial in which at the end of the day may collapse due to the conduct of the prosecutor? The simple solution would be, get another prosecutor to be on board. I'm not saying he must go and stay at home. He must not simply be the lead prosecutor who's going to speak on behalf of the NPA. And then the response from the NPA would be, but I have freedom and the right to choose whichever prosecutor I want to represent me, in as much as you have one to choose whichever legal representative to assist you in your matter. So it's up to the court to then decide, and even the Constitutional Court, but the Crown Court has decided, by the way, and if they've simply said, it is for us, the charge to prosecute definition simply means that let's look at the administrative processes only if you have the adequate papers, the right qualification, you've been properly employed and given title to prosecute, then we are done. Anything else dealing with the conduct of the prosecutor must be dealt with in another manner.
Certainly a lot to look forward to in court, Michelle and Ziyanda. Court is expected to begin at 10 o'clock today, so we'll hear whether or not then and see whether or not the former president's lawyers will bring a fresh application. Otherwise, then we're just expecting a postponement just to deal with the logistics of preparing the first few witnesses for the start of the trial, hopefully.
Yeah, we're starting to sound like broken records, aren't we, Ziyanda? Hoping that the trial is about to start. Ziyanda Ngcobo live to us there outside the High Court in Pietermaritzburg.